So, Patty, I really enjoyed our interview today with Stephen Morris. Wow, what just a fantastic, just a delightful person, a fantastic interview
Delightful.
from somebody that's like on the front lines building a 1099 sales team.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really great that we had Stephen, because we've talked a lot in the past about building a W-2 sales force,
Yes, yes,
and sort of like how how that's more beneficial. But I think Stephen really gets to the nut of working with a 10, how to effectively work with a 1099.
1099. Yeah, I think there's so many benefits of each model, and I think he did a fantastic job of really describing what's necessary to make it work.
Right.
Then questions from the field. I really dive into one of these key questions for software companies as far as should they do 1099 team, W2 team, ISO distribution, strategic partners, like what should they do? And I talk about that, and then tell us about
Right.
the insiders today.
We give an update on Fed Now, the real-time payment network coming out of the Fed. And I think people are going to be really interested in James and I had a very interesting discussion about that. So stay tuned for that. And of course, this episode is brought to you by ISOAMP. Getisoamp.com. Visit it, see what you think.
Let's go. Hey, everybody. We are here today with Stephen Morris, who is the SVP of Partner Relations at Bright Payment Solutions. How you doing today, Stephen?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thanks for having me aboard.
Yeah, it's long overdue. I always
Yes.
enjoy Stephen's content and contributions to the various Facebook groups and LinkedIn, etc. And I thought we got to get you on the podcast. So we're going to talk about building a 1099 team, obviously a very
Yes.
popular approach in the industry, and we're going to dive into that. But before we do, we got to hear your story. I always love this part. So how did you get into this ridiculous industry? Like what happened? And then tell us about your journey to Bright.
Okay. Like I said, this is a safe space, right?
Right. Yeah.
I will be honest with you. I've been in the industry now 23 years. I got it
Wow.
in when I was
Great.
23. I just graduated from college and got a girl pregnant and I needed a job.
You need to
And
make some money.
it was tough because I came from a very religious background. My mother was super Christian, and I had to tell her a week after I graduated from college that I had a baby on the way. And so I went to a job fair. I'll never forget this. I went to a job fair with my college roommate, and he wanted to get into bank card processing. Back then, that was when we had the knuckle busters and you put the card on and you
Right.
ran the image and you got your money days later. There was no such thing as next day funding.
Right.
And he wanted the job really bad. And then the guy who was interviewing him, it was a small processor by the name of Xenex Merchant Services out of Cedarhurst, Long Island. And the guy saw me work in the room. I was just trying to be my natural self and just introducing myself to find out who's who. And he said, I want to hire this guy. And I said, well, no, you want my friend Tony? He goes, no, I want to talk to you because he says, you've talked to everybody in here. And he says, I think that that's going to carry you a long way. So I got the job. I was a telemarketer. And this was before the internet. So before Google and AOL, this is when you had the CD for AOL, and you had to put in your CD-ROM, and
Right.
you had the noise that you had to wait until you got your connection on your computer. And we were calling out of the phone book. I was in New York City, and we would pick a different industry every day. We'd call every dry cleaners, every obstetrician, every
Wow. So
every
you were
daycare
selling
center
knuckle busters over the phone in New York
over
City.
the phone. Yeah.
Woo!
And
In New York
so
City.
in New York,
That
yeah,
is real
the
credit card
phone book was
processing
about
there.
this thick.
Right.
And so I hated my job, but I couldn't quit because I had a baby on the way and I had to
Right.
make it
Right.
work. And so by month number 4, I was the top telemarketer in the company. And I knew that there was money to be made because you see all the salespeople, they're driving around in the best cars. And I had
Right.
never known what a Maserati was until I was, started working at this company. And one day they said, hey, do you want to go out in the field? And that was the one thing that changed my life. I went out in the field. I came back and I told them, I said, I never want to get on the phones again. I want to go out in the field and see
Yeah.
people. My
Yeah.
days were never the same. And, you got to talk to people and learn about their business. So I transitioned after month number 4 or 5 and went to outside sales, and I never looked back. And so by the time my son was born, my residuals were like 1,500 a month. I'll never forget my mother, who was a housekeeper. She had worked her way to get me through college. And like the first couple of months, she said, well, I didn't work this hard for you to make $200 a week. This is ridiculous. And by the time she saw that $1,500 check, because this was before direct deposit, she
Right.
said, you keep that job.
Yeah.
And it's grown ever since. So
Yeah.
I started out cutting my teeth. I thought, the funny thing is, I thought anybody that was in like the business world, that's what you had to do. So I didn't know
Right.
any better. I didn't
Right.
know that, you could quit.
Right. Right. Yeah. It wasn't
I
an
just figured
option.
I figured that's what everybody did to make a living. And then it wasn't until I started seeing other people working in other industries. And I was like, you don't have to beg people for your business. And they're
Right.
like, no, it just, we do something completely different. So sales was I was thrust into it, but I don't look back and I don't regret it. 23 years
Yeah.
later, I'll be 50 next year. It's just amazing what this industry has done. And here's the great part about me getting that young lady pregnant. That was actually my first wife. My son, who is 26, is now in the industry. I got in the industry
Wow.
because of him, and now he just
Now
started
he's
for
in.
merchant sales in Orlando.
Wow. That's
That's
fantastic.
pretty cool.
What a great
Yeah,
story.
he's
We've
gonna
heard.
be super happy that I mentioned his name on this podcast. So shout out to Mark Anthony Morris.
Yeah, it's funny. We hear a lot of stories on the podcast. That was a really good one. I got to tell you, that was pretty cool. So
That was one
Yeah.
of the few we hear where somebody actually went out. We hear about somebody who went out because they wanted to get into card processing.
Yeah.
yeah, right. Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That is an important distinction. Most people are like, I got tricked into it, or I
Or yeah, I just
accidentally.
found this job. It was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh,
Well,
I saw it in the paper.
yeah, right. So, all right. So, Stephen, let's do this. Let's fast forward that story a little bit and talk to me
Okay.
about the first time that you brought on a 1099 sales agent. Give me a little context of like when was that? What was that decision like, and how did that work out? Tell me about that very first 1099 agent that you brought on.
Okay. That was in 2013. So believe it or not, 10 years ago.
Okay.
Like I said, I had everybody says that they were successful in sales. This is sales. Sales is tough. It's hard.
Right.
You got to build credibility and integrity. And I think that was one of the things that merchants kind of saw with me whenever I would go out, because I don't know everything about this business. I'll be honest.
Right.
This is an ever changing business, and things are one way one day and then a different way the next. So I guess my honesty and just me being transparent, I was one of those guys that if I didn't know something, I'd tell you I didn't know.
Right.
So when it came time to recruiting, that actually was pretty interesting, because a gentleman by the name of Michael DePinto, he reached out to me. Now, he had worked for Northern Leasing Systems. I was a big time lease guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And he was my manager at the time he was like my RM for Northern.
Right.
And him and Richie Hahn, they reached out to me and they said, hey, have you ever thought about teaching other people to do what you do? And of course, I'm like, no, I haven't.
Right.
I didn't really think about teaching other people. And they said, well, it can really be advantageous. You find talent, you build them up, and you teach them what they do. And then you really can start developing a vast network. And so Mike DePinto was actually my way of getting in on the recruiting side. And it was tough, just like with anything else. Like me, I love a challenge. If I know I can make it work, I don't care how many times I have to keep going back to the drawing board. I'm going to keep going back until I get it done. I'm just hard-headed that way. But I think that's where success comes from, is perseverance. And if it doesn't work, you can always go back the next day and say, well, let me tweak it this way, or let me turn it that way. I think that's one of the key features of people that are successful, is they never quit until they master it. And so I'm not saying I'm like a master of recruiting, but the one thing that I was able to take from merchant services sales, I was now able to transfer that energy over to someone who was hungry like me to kind of guide them in the right direction.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. Let's start, if you don't mind, at sort of the beginning, okay? Because I've been in this business a long time, and it seems to me that with 1099s, basically, some companies will recruit anybody with a pulse.
Correct.
Right.
They will.
Because they have nothing to lose, or so they think.
That's right.
So what's your approach to identifying a good sales agent to join your team?
I mean, for me, it's really it's character and integrity. Those are the two things that I look for, because 1099, I can't control your motivation. I can only inspire you to want to go out there and meet merchants. You know, when you're 1099, there's no quota. You actually can work for multiple processors. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, there are a number of people that I coach and work with that they have 3 or 4 partnerships. They don't work exclusively for Bright. So you have to remember that as a recruiter of 1099 agents, that number one, in many cases, depending upon the product you sell or the product you don't sell, they may not be 100% devoted to you. But the one thing that I look for is just having integrity and being a man or a woman of honor. If you're not a truthful person, this industry is already grimy enough. And so I look for integrity first. I can motivate and inspire all day, but if I can't trust you, we can't work together. So I'm not one of those guys that, oh, well, just bring me your brother and bring me your sister. And, you know, a lot of ISOs, they want to bring aboard, like you said, anybody with a pulse. And the reason why is because they're expecting you to exasperate all of your immediate connections. And then after like month number 3 or 4, they're expecting you to quit. And so when you quit, they keep your residuals. And I'm not that guy. I just learned over time that I may not be the best solution for everyone. There are a lot of companies out there that you know, they just want mids and want you to do 2,000, and you know, they're just trying to build as much in margin and as much in mids as possible. But overall, I just want the right people. If I can help a handful of people, you know, get to a certain level, then eventually they'll be on their own, and then I feel great at night because this business is very rewarding. You know, a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, you could buy a Porsche or you could buy a Lamborghini. That's not important to me. I want you to get out of debt. You know, I want you to be able to take a vacation that you may not have ever taken before, and then come back a month later and have a residual waiting on you. That's my pride and joy, because at the end of the day, we can't take any of this with us. You know, I can't take money into the grave. So if I can pour into another human being and teach them how to operate the greatest business that I think has ever been, then that's where I start. So to answer your question, I just need you to be honest and have integrity, and be willing to make mistakes, because you are. I promise you, you are.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice,
Mhm.
Steve. What about once you find an agent that you want to bring on board? You know, what sort of interaction or qualification do you do before bringing them on?
Well, you know, of course we do a background check. You know, that's key. You want to make sure that, you know, they're not doing any white collar crime and
Right. Not wanted.
anything illegal with credit card numbers. So
Right.
we do a background check. Now, you know, I talk to a lot of people every day, and everyone tells you that they are the LeBron James of merchant services. You know, they're the next phenomena to come out. And I look to make sure that you're going to honor your word. That's the one thing that we get away from. Basic, simple practices that our mothers and fathers taught us is honor your word and be a man or woman of integrity. So once I kind of talk to you for a while, I mean, it's a relationship. It's not something that, you know, I'm just going to talk to you once. I'm going to send you an agent agreement, and then you're never going to hear from me again. No, it's a walk through the park. We're going to date for a little while, because I want to see what you do, how you respond, and if you are a man or a woman of your word. I mean, there's going to be a lot of pressure in merchant services. You know, Patti, you know, James. Things don't always go right. We're technology, we're fintech, and we deal with people. And those are the 2 things that are always going to kind of mess up from time to time. But I'm looking to see stickability. I'm looking to see durability and being coachable. And once I get that, then I kind of know if we're going to work together. I've had to walk away from a couple of agents, but at the end of the day, 1099, that's the good thing about it, is that even if you signed up one deal and you left us, we're going to pay you on that one deal as long as they're processing. So you know, I'm looking for just really character versus knowing the business. If they have sales experience, that's always good too. You know, you definitely want to know that they can handle themselves when it comes to talking to business owners. But overall, it's integrity, it's coachability, and it's durability.
You know, a couple of things I found really interesting that I would love to follow up on, Stephen. one of them I found really interesting is your motivation for what you do, because
Mhm.
this gets lost on so many people that I talk to, especially individual agents who become successful, and they
Right,
say, "I want to start bringing on 1099 agents." And my first question to them is, "Why?"
right.
And
You
what
gotta love people.
you do, because what I find is you generally have three motivations, right, to do this. Two of them never work. Only one of them does. The two that don't work are, I'm tired of prospecting. That one, right?
That's right.
Like basically, I'm done. So I'm going to bring on some independent people and I'm going to assume
And
that they're
let
going
them
to
do
work.
my job.
Yeah. And I'm going to let them do my job. Hello. You're about to bring on people that have no idea what they're doing. And you think your job's about to get easier? No.
That's
You
Yeah,
think
right.
you don't
right.
need to go out in the field anymore?
Yeah.
No. Like you're
Yeah.
bringing on people that don't know what they're doing. Like, so that's number one. And number two, like you just mentioned, was money, right? And they think,
Yeah.
I'm going to make so much more money with these 1099s. Well, actually, you're going to make a small percentage of what you were
Right.
making before on people that
That's
can't sell nearly as well as you can. So
right.
actually, no, it does take quite a while. Now, eventually, like it's definitely a long-term, play. Like it does
Mhm.
pay off big time. And there is something, I know you've experienced this. I remember when I got my first $10,000 residual check from my 1099 channel,
Right.
right? I'd been recruiting it took me a while to get there. Initially, it's like from the YouTube videos and all that, and it was slow going. But
Oh, yeah.
back when I was doing it, man, I mean, it probably took me, it was at least 18 months, I bet, really, honestly.
Okay.
Before I got 10,000 from the 1099s, because I had this like referral relationship, with the big processor. But when I got
Right.
that first 10 grand, where I was like, I
It's
don't
like, I'm
even
done.
I don't even know any of these merchants. This is fantastic. Like, this is
Good.
unbelievable. Like, none of these merchants would ever call me. I can go on vacation
Right.
and not work. Like, I
It's
don't
like,
even
this
know
is
these
great.
people. This is fantastic. So that it is a great thing. But at the same time, the truth is, if I would have put the same amount of time and effort that I took to build that 10,000 into selling
Yes.
merchant services, I would have made 30,000 a month extra.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Here's the thing that I want to add is that
Yeah.
we all, well, I come from, there's a great debate between who's the better basketball player, LeBron James or Michael Jordan. I'm a Michael Jordan guy.
Well,
I've
me
I've
too.
watched him over the
Is really a
years.
debate about this, but anyway, go
There
ahead.
is no debate.
I'm
Thank
from
you. I'm glad
Chicago,
we can
so
all agree on this.
obviously.
But here's the thing: Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player to ever play the game, but he's a horrible GM. He's a horrible owner. And
Right.
so what does that mean? That means that although you know how to sell, although you know how to talk to merchants, can you teach that to
Right.
somebody else? And so just because you're a great player, that doesn't make you a great coach. And that's what
Yeah.
I've learned over the instance. I mean, I think I was a decent salesperson. I'm not gonna say I was the greatest salesperson. I did well. I was able to, take care of my family and pay my bills and have some money
Right.
left in the bank afterwards. But it took me a while to master people. People, I mean, the great thing about being a recruiter is that you deal with people. The bad thing about being a recruiter is you deal with people.
Right.
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 And so you're dealing with their issues.
Yeah.
I've become a life coach, a
Right.
motivational speaker.
Right.
I remember one guy, he would call me religiously, and this is where you got to learn time management.
Right.
He would call me religiously and maybe do like one deal every 3 months. And I was like, oh, you're trying not to, try not to push him to the side because he's excited, but you got to
Yeah.
value your time as well. But to make a
Yeah.
long story short, he ended up becoming a great salesperson because he needed somebody to kind of help him in the areas where he suffered. And I'll never forget one of our final conversations before it really clicked. I told him, I said, man, you talk too much. I said, you do more talking to me than you do to the merchants. Go
Right.
out there and change your life and inspire yourself to achieve
Yeah.
greatness.
Yeah.
You're not going to know the answer to every question right then and there.
Right.
And if you have to say you don't know, say you don't know. But talking to me more than you're talking to your merchant is
Right.
not going to help your pockets. And now the dude's like making like 30,000 a month. So
Right.
it took a little tough love, but some
Right.
people have it, some people don't.
Yeah. Well, I think again, going back to that motivation, it comes through so clearly for in your voice and your interaction here is that you have this passion to help people, you have this passion to see other people succeed, and when that's your primary motivation, you can build a really big team and you can make a lot of money long term, but
Right.
it's not about the money is a byproduct. The motivation has to be, I want to, I'm doing this for the emails, for the phone calls, for the text messages I get of people that
Right.
say, I literally got a text last night from a rep who said, I can't remember what it was. I was asking something, some email we sent out about content. Anyway, he emailed me and just said, man, if you ever need anything from me, let me know. I make 20,000 a month because I watched your videos. I got started in the industry. I've never even talked to this guy. I don't even know who he is. And he's like,
That is probably
it
the
changed my
best
family's
feeling.
life. You know what I mean?
That's the best feeling in the world, man.
Right.
That no amount of money can really affect that. And just to hear somebody tell you that you changed their life on a great scale. We live in a world, man, where things are horrible, man. People are suffering. Eggs are like what, $20 a dozen
I know,
now?
it's crazy. Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
So to be able to get a text message like that or a call where somebody can say, hey, James, hey, Patty, hey, Steven, you guys changed my life. That doesn't happen every day.
And that's what it's all about, right? So, all right, we got to get this moving. Here we go. So I got a couple other questions I want to get through. No, we're doing this. I just love this conversation. It's so fun. So, okay, we're back on track here. So you bring an agent on board. You're like, all right, this is the agent. We're gonna bring them on board. So then you got to get them to do their first deal.
Yes.
Talk about that. What happens between signing the agreement, the agent agreement, to like getting a first deal? How do you make that happen, or what do you do to help facilitate that?
I tell every agent, if I don't help you get 10 deals within your first 90 days, I've failed you.
So you set that expectation.
That's the expectation from the moment they're approved. That's my first, and they all can tell you this if they watch this podcast. I have 90 days to get you 10 accounts.
Right.
And if I don't do that, then I failed you. And so we put a timeline. We have to put a deadline on our success, and we have to set benchmarks. If we're just going to go at this all willy-nilly and wish that it happens, we're going to fail every day. So I tell them up front what the timeline is, and then we have to develop a game plan. So number one, it's a mixture of two things. We have to teach you the business, and then we also have to teach you how to use your immediate contact sphere to get in front of people. You'll be amazed at how many people want to do this business, but they have no connection to the business community. They don't know about BNI. They don't know about the Chamber of Commerce. Like they're just trying to figure this out. And they heard about it because their friend told them or what have you.
Right.
So it's a battle of teaching them the business. By the way, we use ISO AMP.
There's my shout out.
So we do use your platform, but it's a great platform. You've developed a target vertical of teaching people this business the right way. And so they learn the business, but then you also have to learn how to sell. So I give them deadlines, I give them benchmarks. And then if they don't hit that benchmark by day number 90, then I have to push them to the side and kind of love them from afar, because I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want to waste my time. Right. So I set those guidelines, because if success is in front of you and people have already reached levels that you're trying to get to, why wouldn't you listen to them? So you got to put a sense of urgency, because what will happen is life gets in the way. You're going to get distracted and you're going to quit. I mean, there's not a high retention on the 1099 side. There is not I could probably count about 1,000 people I know that at one point can say, oh yeah, I tried to do that merchant services thing. It didn't work for me. I'm still surprised you're doing it, Steven. And the reason why I'm still doing it, I didn't quit. I didn't give up.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So now you already kind of touched on this next one, but I'm kind of curious to hear a little more context to this. So for me, when I was building my team, this is, I guess, wow, it's been like 7 years. I think it's like 7 years since I was actively building a team. I know I'm getting old, man. I'm getting really old, almost 40. Anyway, so when I was doing that, for me, it was 1, 3, and 10. In other words, I want to help the agent get their first deal. Then I want to help the agent get to their third deal. Usually the first deal was their uncle or their aunt or whatever, right? I want to get them to 3 deals. Then I want to get them to 10 deals. And I felt like once they got to deal 10, I was like, I got something. Right. They're not, it's like they're in, you know what I mean? So you mentioned the number 10 as well. What are your thoughts on kind of these metrics? And do you do anything different? What's that progression like to get them from 1, 3, 10 or whatever your metrics are? Does it change over that period of time?
Honestly, I actually like that metric that you illustrated, because I'm assuming you said 7 years ago? So that was back before dual pricing and all this stuff. Now it's a little different. You can sign up merchants a lot faster if you're going to do dual pricing. That will guarantee them a higher rate of return and residuals. So my logic is 1, 10, 3,000. What does that mean? The first deal, you want to make sure they get that on. By the time they get to 10 deals, they should know how to do paperwork correctly, whether you
Right.
have an electronic app or whether you have a paper app, however your process or your protocol is, they should already know that. Like if I work at McDonald's, let's say I went to work at McDonald's and I never knew how to make Big Macs. Well, the first Big Mac, I may mess up. I may leave off the pickles or the cheese or the lettuce. By my 10th or 15th Big Mac, if I should know how to make it with my eyes closed.
Right.
So that's the same way with merchant services. By your 10th or maybe your 15th application, you should already kind of have a system of, what's your favorite terminal? What's your favorite, your go-to platform? By that point, you probably have maybe a lot of the same type of merchant. You may have,
Right.
like my first 50 accounts were all dentists. And that was because I met one dentist, ask for referrals. That's another thing that people need to take from this thing is you have to ask for referrals. If you
Right.
don't ask for referrals, you're killing yourself.
Yes.
So take that as a little side note. If you don't remember anything else, remember that. So I train my guys to always ask for referrals because if the merchant signed with you, he probably knows other people in that same vertical that will sign with you as well. So if you get in the same tradition and habit of signing up the paperwork the right way, making sure that it goes through a smooth underwriting process, by the time you get to deal number 10 or 15, you're in. The $3,000 part is the money. Once I get you to $3,000 a month in residuals, we don't need to talk as much. We just see each other at the conferences and at the shows, and now you just got to find a way to make that $3,000 residual into $7,500 in less time.
Right.
And now that's on you. So that's where I'm at. So by that point, you really get to see, because once you get to 3,000 a month, that's a real I don't care what kind of job you have.
Yeah.
That's a nice chunk of change that you're like, okay, I can grow this even bigger. How can I get to 10,000? And then now that's where the relationship manager will come in and they kind of make it easier for me because now I have a team that's going to help a guy that's already done it reached a certain benchmark, and then he just wants to go to the next level.
Right. And then as long as their ceiling's not too low, and they actually have ambition, because you can't help somebody break through their own ceiling. To me,
correct.
I'll talk to them, and I had a lot of agents I talk to, and they're like, yeah, I don't really do much in the business anymore because I make $7,500 a month, and I'm like, really?
That's it?
That was your goal? Like, are you kidding? If I made $7,500 a month, my house would foreclose. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Come on.
But see, that's the motivation. That's the thing you can't control. And so I tell people, I'm following your dreams. Your dreams may not be my dreams.
What's your version of success, right?
Yeah. So 7,500.
That is tough though, right? Like sometimes it's kind of tough to say, like, are you sure that's your version? You don't have a charity you're isn't there something you want to do here? Like, anyway, whole other topic.
He doesn't have, whoever that guy is, I promise you, he doesn't have a wife and kids.
Yeah, right. Yeah, your wife will help you lift that ceiling very quickly, right? So
yeah, he's probably got like 7 roommates.
Yeah. All right. So last question is, and this is an interesting one because I think it really dovetails with everything we've just talked about. So we're talking about, oh wow, we got this streamlined system. We're gonna get you 1 to 3 to 10 to 3,000 residual, and you're gonna know what you're doing. But we got to layer on top of that. Wait a second. Integrated payments, right? Point of sale systems, virtual terminals. It's not like, when I was building my team 7 years ago, we were really starting to get into that, but it was mostly terminals. Now it's like, wait a second. And one of the reasons I really wanted to ask you this question is because I happen to know, Dave Humphrey is a good friend of mine. You guys do this. Like, you guys do this really well. I mean, you actually do sell a lot of smart terminals, point of sale systems, etc. Yeah. How does all this fit in, especially with this newer 1099? Are you kind of encouraging them to stay simple initially, or what's the process? How do you get them into selling more integrated payments?
That is actually a great question. The reason why I came to Bright, and I'll say this, I know you guys didn't ask me, but I'm gonna tell you why.
Yeah.
I was recruiting for another company. They're no longer in existence. They actually sold during the pandemic, and they were just a terminal shop. They didn't really master POS. They didn't master certain products. And here's the problem with that. Okay, let's say, James, you're my merchant, right? And I sell you a POS system where as the processor, I'm interested in collecting the revenue on your processing.
Right.
But I sell you a POS system. Let's say you're a restaurant, right? And I sell you this POS system, and I'm like, hey, this is the greatest POS. And you say, hey, all right, Stephen, I'm assigned for it. And we install the POS. Let's say over the weekend, that point of sale system crashes on you, or you're having all these problems on your busiest days. You're going to call me up. And if all I'm investing in is the processing, my response is going to be, you have to call the POS company
Right.
for tech support.
Right.
Right. Because all I can do is control your rates and your
Right.
matches and
Right.
things like that. And so what ends up happening is on Monday morning, when the weekend's over, you're going to call me up and you're going to say, Stephen, come pick up this piece of what we all know the other word of POS system stands for. Come pick up this piece of SH, whatever. And so the reason why I came to Bright is because we kind of took the stance that we're not going to sell any product that we cannot support in-house.
Right.
That is super important.
Yeah.
Because if you can't support the product in-house on level 1 or level 2 technical support, the merchant's going to leave. So
absolutely,
what happens with an agent, a lot of times these guys will go out, and merchants are getting smart. Square has got a dominant Square, Toast. A lot of companies are out there now really going towards point of sale versus a terminal because they want to know the analytics. They want to know if they're selling more chicken Parmesan than eggplant Parmesan, if their employees are coming to work on time to manage their payroll. POS is something that is going to only get better and greater as the industry progresses. But here's the thing, how do you teach that to a new person? So it takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of education because in some cases, let's be honest, we have Google, and these merchants are smarter than some of these agents on the street. So if you don't know your product, if your company cannot support the product, they don't care about the rate 9 times out of 10. With dual pricing being as popular as it is now, that's not even an argument anymore. So it is a challenge, but at the same token, you'll know who to pour into on the 1099 side, because what will happen is, depending upon where they live, their demographic, their neighborhood, where they sell, it's probably already populated by Toast or Square or a certain vertical. They have to become astute enough to say, hey, if I'm going to be a part of this game and be a part or to be a player, I've got to master my craft. So you may come in only selling terminals, but as you grow, and this is the thing I love, there's so many different POS providers out there, so many different ISVs that you can work with that you'll want to, it's almost like continuing education. You're going to have to always be a student of the game in order for you to get better. So my point is, if you are with a processor or you're 1099 and you feel, hey, we only can sell terminals, you're going to have to really expand your mind into POS. You got great POS like Hot Sauce and Level and, all these other ones that are out there right now. And if your ISO is not in the POS market, they're going to have to. That's the reason why I left my initial processor. They didn't offer POS systems. They were still selling Hypercom T7Ps until 2010. So
it's got to be that transition. I love it. Stephen, this has been such a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time. For those who want to learn more about you, they want to learn more about Bright, where would you send them to connect with you or learn more?
Call Dave Humphrey. No, I'm just I'm just kidding. You guys can give me a call. It's one thing, I'll give you my email, because if you call me, I'm just gonna make my phone even more crazy. Stephen M, Steven, the letter M for my last name, at Bright, BRYTE Our website is brightps.com. And honestly, if you guys are looking to get some unbiased information, like I said, even though I recruit and I help with sales for Bright, honestly, I'm a wealth of information, and I don't need to recruit everybody. I kind of know who's a good fit for us. But even if you just need just basic information, I kind of adopt the same way that you are, James. It's a way for us to really help other people be successful. And so I go in with a pure motive, and you tell me what's wrong, and I'll say, hey, this is what you need to do, with no financial gain, no bias whatsoever, because I believe that the good Lord is going to bless me regardless if you do the right thing.
Love it. Awesome.
Amen.
Stephen, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. And wish you a fantastic rest of the year. So Patti, the sponsor of this podcast, is ISO Amp, the leader in full service statement analysis. We sent out an email recently that got a lot of interesting replies and stuff. So one thing people may not know about the platform is that we can do compliant surcharging.
I saw
And
that email. Yes.
yeah, it's kind of a big deal right now because of the surcharge cap and some people that are kind of moving towards the compliant surcharging approach right now. And the reason that it's important is because it's actually really difficult to do a proposal for somebody on compliant, that want to do compliant surcharging, because it's pretty rare to find somebody who's already on it. So
Oh,
if you're
right.
selling it, you're generally selling where you're converting somebody from Interchange Plus or
Sure.
from tiered pricing or flat rate or whatever, or, you know, dual pricing, whatever, over to and surcharging. And it's tricky because with compliant surcharging, of course, you can't add the fee to debit, signature debit, or PIN debit. And so how do you know what the margin is going to be? How do you know what they're going to pay?
Yeah, sure.
What are their
sure.
costs? You know what I mean? Now, what our system does is we take all of the available data and we use that to try to determine this. So a lot of times we can do it really well because we have an interchange table and we literally pull the interchange table and pull out all the debit categories. And we say the debit categories are the ones where the merchant's going to have to pay the fee.
Right.
The credit is where, right, where the consumer is going to pay it. Other times it's tiered pricing. We can try to pull it from the merchant activity table. So we're very good at trying to pull it. And if we can't pull it, we guess. And we're really good at guessing based on the
I
business
would
type and
imagine
the
you're
average
great
ticket
at
size.
guessing because you've seen so many of these.
We
right?
have tens of thousands of statements, right? So we're able to take that data and so no matter what the statement is, you can always convert it from anything to anything.
Right.
That's how our system is built. So if you want to check that out, head over to getisoamp.com, getisoamp.com, getisoamp.com. Click on free demo, and we'd be happy to have my team do a demo for you and show you what we can do. So Patti, today I'm taking a little break from my mini series on overcoming objections because I want to talk about, you know, what I believe is one of the most important decisions today for software companies, for technology companies. I just am dealing with this so much, and it has so many far-reaching implications for the ISO world, the agent world, and everything like that. And here's the decision. The decision is, are we processor agnostic, or do we do our own in-house payments, or do we offer both options? And I just want to talk about it for a minute because there's several really important considerations here. And I have my own kind of biases, but before I get to those, let's talk about what we're talking about. Like, what is the real issue? What's the real question here? And the way I look at this, Patti, is there's these three layers that we have to think about.
Okay.
Layer number one is the merchant experience. So if I'm a software company, I am a software company. You know, one of my software companies, somebody else's software company. If I'm trying to serve small business owners and I'm thinking about how am I going to handle payments? Well, if payments are a really important part of your experience and people need to sign up for a payment processing account to use your software, then them signing up should be really simple, really smooth, really easy for them to do that. From the online application, the underwriting process, which should be instant, nearly instant, unless you're medium to high risk. The deployment and implementation, which should be almost entirely automated and instantaneous, right? This is the non-negotiable part of this discussion.
Sure.
So whether you say we're going to become a PayFac, or we're going to use Tilde for PayFac services, or, you know, we are going to be a wholesale ISO, or we are going to have strategic partners that are going to sell our technology, regardless of which of those, understand that if the merchant is not having this seamless, easy experience, you are not positioned for success, because friction and complexity will always lose when they can be minimized with another option. So it's just, you have to remove friction and complexity. You have to. So the merchant experience has to be fantastic. Number one, that's non-negotiable. Second non-negotiable, the sales partner, sales professional, sales agent, the person who is selling your solution with the payment processing integrated into it, their experience has to be similarly free of friction and complexity. And there are just a lot of agents who are frankly fed up, and I understand, I agree with them, fed up with this idea of the processor, which integrates to the software company through the gateway. And two things tend to happen with this model unless somebody does something about it, which I'll talk about in a second. Two things happen. Number one, the sign up is a nightmare. It takes forever. The settings are wrong with the gateway. Something doesn't work. And number two, once that becomes apparent and there's an issue, all three companies point their fingers at each other.
At each other. Yeah.
And these agents are sick and tired of it. I know agents that are like, hey, I'm like, I have this one ISO, this one processor, and like, I love them and I love the company and that's where I do my deals. But when it comes to a point of sale system for this vertical, I go over here. And I sell payment processing for this tech company. And when it comes to this other vertical, I go over here because they understand and they are just sick of it. It's like, why do they have to deal with all this friction and complexity? So the important thing is this: when you're thinking about, okay, do we go third party? Do we get strategic partnerships? Do we become a PayFac? Stop everything and understand there are two non-negotiables: the merchant experience, free of friction and complexity, and the salesperson's experience, free from friction and complexity. Those are non-negotiable. So with that in mind, what do? How do you build this distribution channel? Several options, right? You can go W-2, right? In-house. The beauty of that, whether it's in the field or on the phone, is that of course you have total control. Also, you're not paying out as much residual. Usually you're paying a salary plus maybe a 20% residual split. So that's a really, really good model. And I think for a lot of software companies, even if all you have is a pilot version of that, like you're a big software company, but you have like 3 outside agents that are making $60,000 a year salary plus 20% residual and plus a little upfront or whatever, it's worth it for 2 reasons. Number one, you may find out it's dynamite and you might go, what are we doing? We need to be investing in this and we need to have 50 agents doing this, right?
Right.
So there's that, but also the data you're going to get,
Yeah,
you're going to understand the real issues. You have control of these agents. And so having some W-2 agents, I think is a good idea if you're a technology company, a software company. I think it's a great idea. Then the question is, okay, well, what about 1099 agents, right? Well, again, 1099 agents, as well as I might add small ISOs, are becoming increasingly annoyed with all of this friction and complexity. Odds are you can do the payment processing in-house and remove all of the friction and complexity and make it just a really good solution. And even if you have to match their current residual split, what do you care? You're going to make the same SaaS fees. You're going to make the same hardware fees that you would anyway.
Right.
Plus 10, 20, 30% of the processing profits. So going after the agent directly, again, as a technology company, I think that's a good option to have. It's definitely a good one to explore, right? Third one is you want to go after big companies. You want to go after the big acquirers, the big ISOs, and say, I want to get distribution through them, and they're going to want you to integrate with their payment processing, right? Well, that's fine and dandy as long as you communicate to them and work with them on the fact that, sure, we're glad to partner with you to create a seamless experience for the merchant and the sales partner. If you're saying you want to integrate with us and then you want to just stop there and just hope it all works out and people know how to set it up, no, thank you.
No.
But if we're going to work together and make a detailed document and training program on how to set up the particular gateway that you want them to use, what settings to use in that gateway, if you've got a really smooth online app, if you're going to create an onboarding, an underwriting template so our deals get nearly auto approved, like if you're saying you want to work with us to create a seamless experience for our merchants and for your sales partners, absolutely, let's do it, because that's another added revenue generation source. So my advice to software companies would be explore all 3 of these options. You have the W-2 agent, you have the 1099 agent, the small ISO, that's kind of option 2. And then you have the large partnerships. Explore all 3. There's no law against doing all 3. There's no reason you can't do all of them. Maybe that's, you may not have the bandwidth. You may not have the operational capabilities or the manpower to do all 3. That's fine. Pick one. But think about all 3 of those. And as you think about the payment processing, keep in mind the constraint that we have to have a seamless, frictionless, experience, no complexity in there for the merchant and the sales partner. That is the non-negotiable.
Yeah. Well, James, it's official. FedNow, the widely anticipated real-time payments network that's being built by the Federal Reserve, will go live in July.
Yeah, I saw that. Pretty exciting.
Now, this is a big deal. A 24/7/365 payment network. To put it in perspective, the Fed currently, it operates the ACH, some wire network, et cetera.
Right. Sure.
It operates on something that I would say is close to what we used to call banker's hours.
Yes.
Yes. 9 to 5 Eastern with lights out on holidays and weekends. Right.
Yep.
Think of, I was writing this up for the green sheet recently, and I came up with this analogy. Think of FedNow as Venmo meets the ACH. except there's no lag at all between the transfer request and the money going into the recipient's bank account. Everything's in real time.
Yep.
We have these Venmos and Zelle and so forth out there that appear to be real time from the user's, from the recipient's perspective.
Right.
But most of those transactions, a lot of them are cleared through the ACH. But I've learned that RTP, which is another real time network,
Right.
also clears a lot of these. Now, RTP, as I said, is a real time network. It was built by the clearinghouse, and it predates FedNow by about 5 years.
Right.
Now, while RTP is accessible by any bank or credit union, it's owned by a handful of the largest banks, and a lot of regional and community banks would rather not contribute to these banks' revenues.
Yeah.
Now, the Fed is sometimes called the processor of last resort. It has electronic connections to 10,000 plus banks and credit unions that are covered by FDIC insurance.
Yep.
The correct connections that are already used for ACH and wire transfer, as well as central bank activities. Think ordering coin and currency or accessing the discount window.
Sure.
And also, all these banks have master accounts to support clearing through the Fed. When you use RTP, you have to, and you're a non-owner bank, you have to open a clearing account with one of those banks. So that's an extra step. Now, both FedNow and RTP are credit networks, and that's because neither the bank owners nor the Fed want to deal with the potential risks that are created by instant real-time debit transactions. The two networks also have transaction caps. The Fed's is 500,000. For FedNow, RTP won't handle real-time payments over $1 million.
You mean as a single payment, or you mean
single transaction?
Okay.
Single transaction. So some of those really large trading partner deals, are not going to be necessarily on RTP.
Sure.
But research consistently shows that consumers and small businesses do want faster payments. The Fed said that its research has found nearly 3/4 of micro businesses and 60% or more of larger businesses believe real-time payments will help them better manage cash and working capital. Now, based on RTP's experience, the most popular applications are account-to-account payments, instant payroll and earned wage access, where you get a portion of your wages before payday, and gig economy payouts. The Fed and others are also betting a lot of bill payments. Both consumer and B2B are going to migrate to FedNow, as it allows for better management of cash flow. In fact, study findings out of the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston suggest that lower income households could save billions of dollars a year in overdraft fees if they received money like their paychecks instantly and didn't have to wait around for good funds before they paid their bills.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, I found that very interesting.
So help me understand something, and you may not know the answer to this, but I admit
I'll give it a shot. I might just fake it.
Yeah, I just haven't done a ton of research on this yet. So, when we're talking about the FedNow, where does this fit in the ecosystem in terms of, are we saying that FedNow is going to have an API that like the processors are going to be able to utilize in order to pay residuals instantly? And is it that kind of a thing? Is it
only if? Yeah, you got to remember that only banks are going to be connected to FedNow.
So this is something that would go through the sponsor bank.
You go through your sponsor bank.
I see.
So you could conceivably have payouts on a same day basis, for example.
Sure.
And you could also, I would imagine, it would also be used for residual payment. It could be used for residual.
That's what I was thinking. Residual bonuses, and then of course in our industry,
like that.
I mean, isn't this going to completely eliminate the whole like 1%, instant payout thing that like Square and others are doing? Because like, there's no reason for that anymore. Like they should be able to do it through FedNow. They may still charge it, but they should be able to do it through FedNow virtually at very, very minimal cost, I would imagine. Right? Are there certain fees associated, or I mean, this is like a.
There's going to be fees, but they're not.
Trivial,
it's like a penny, 5 cents, something like that.
Yeah, something very, very small.
Very trivial. The fees, they put the fees out not long ago, and what I remember is they were almost identical to RTP. Yeah. And I remember RTP is like a nickel maybe per transaction.
And then I have to wonder as well, the other thing I really have to wonder is this going to really upend the card brands and their effort at B2B? You know what I mean? Aren't there going
Oh,
to be
I think it could. I think it could upend that. I think it could also upend the ACH. I
Well, of
mean, the
course.
ACH is used for a lot of those types of transactions that we're talking
Absolutely.
about.
What I'm saying is
And
now it's kind of like, hey, send us the payment instantly through the Fed
yeah,
now.
through the Fed. Yeah.
I mean, that kind of, if I'm a business, because again, a lot of the rationale for B2B card acceptance is this idea that you want to get your money faster and more convenient. So obviously there are other things, there's a lot of other benefits to it. I won't get into all that here, but
Right.
we need to get Roger McNamara back on to talk about all that.
We should get Roger back on for that. Yeah.
But I think it is interesting. I mean, it's an interesting player in that market, I guess I would say.
I think so too. And I think, where you're going to see it less, a lot of people are like, oh, this is going to be great for consumer POS. I'm not so convinced it's going to be in the POS that fast. And I think didn't we interview the folks from Psionic?
Yeah, at some point recently.
Several months back. They have an agreement with a technology company called SpacePoint where they're going to do a pay by bank service where payments can get instantly transferred to bank accounts, the merchant accounts from the consumer account. But it does, and they do a lot of work in developing markets, supporting voice and data. I just don't see it for the average retailer, at least not at this point.
Not yet, but I mean, I think the real question is going to be who are going to be the big technology innovators that build on top of this.
And I think you can pretty well safely guess that Fiserv will be one of them.
Yes, of course. Yep.
Because Fiserv already has a direct connection to Fed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, definitely keep us in the loop on this one. I'll be curious to see how it goes.
I sure will, James. Thanks.